The moment the FBI raided the quiet little house at the end of Willow Creek Road, nobody expected to find her standing there, calm, barefoot, and smiling like she'd been waiting for them. Agents rushed in with guns drawn, shouting commands, but she didn't flinch. Her name was Emily Carter, America's favorite neighbor, kind-hearted volunteer, loving wife, and the woman the FBI believed had just pulled off one of the boldest deceptions in modern true crime history. But the scariest part? She looked each agent in the eyes and said softly, almost kindly, "You're too late." Seconds later, something happened. Something so shocking that the lead agent froze mid-step, unable to decide whether he was staring at the greatest criminal he'd ever chased, or the most misunderstood woman alive. And before anyone could react, Emily made a move no one in that room expected. But to understand how she fooled everyone, even the FBI, we have to go back to where it all began, long before Willow Creek, long before the raids, back when Emily Carter was just a woman everyone adored, the woman no one suspected. Emily wasn't born dangerous. At least, that's what people would say later, when her face appeared on every news network across the country. They showed her school pictures first, soft brown eyes, a shy smile, freckles she tried to hide with her fingers. They talked to her neighbors from childhood who described her as gentle, sweet, and the kind of kid who brought soup to your doorstep if you were sick. And it was true. She was kind, maybe too kind. She grew up in a small Indiana town where everyone knew every birthday, every argument, every burnt batch of cookies. Life was quiet, simple, full of potluck dinners and front porch stories. Emily loved stories. Her father read mystery novels to her every night, and she used to ask him why people made bad choices. His answer never changed. Because sometimes, sweetheart, kind people get pushed too far. Emily carried that sentence with her throughout her whole life. In school, she was a helper, holding the door for teachers, tutoring younger kids who struggled with reading, rescuing stray animals, and begging her parents to keep them. She wasn't the smartest kid, not the most confident, but she had a heart everyone trusted. And that trust? That became her strongest weapon later. When she met David Carter at age 24, she thought her life had finally landed in the warm, safe place she always wished for. David was a firefighter from Chicago. Big laugh, kind eyes, a man who always paid for the person behind him at drive-thrus. Emily fell for him fast. They married a year later, moved into a quiet suburban neighborhood, and started building a life that looked perfect from the outside. But perfect things can crack quietly. The first crack came the night Emily found a note slipped under their front door. It wasn't a love letter, or a threat, or anything dramatic. It was only a folded sheet of notebook paper with 7 words. "You don't know who your husband is." Emily stared at it for a long time, her heart fluttering like a trapped bird. She waited for David to get home from his shift, waited to show him, waited for him to laugh and say someone was messing with them. Instead, he went pale, too pale. He told her not to worry, told her it was a prank, told her to forget it, and she tried. She truly did. But some things don't stay buried. 2 weeks later came the second crack. Small, but sharper. Emily was cleaning the living room when she found a stack of mail David had hidden inside an old showbox. Most of it was simple, boring, nothing special. But at the very bottom was a medical bill addressed to someone named Daniel Carter, a name David had never mentioned. She asked him again. This time he didn't get pale. This time he got angry. Not violent, but frustrated, tired, almost defensive, like someone being accused of something much worse. He said Daniel was his cousin, said it was a mistake, said he didn't want to talk about it because it was family stuff. Emily wanted to believe him, because believing him felt easier than imagining he was lying. But the cracks kept growing. The third one came when Emily discovered he had a second phone. It wasn't hidden well, just tucked behind a stack of old tax papers. She only found it because she was looking for spare batteries. She turned it on. It buzzed instantly with a message from an unknown number. "We need the files. Deadline is close." Her hands shook as she read it again and again, trying to make sense of it. Files? Deadline? What files? Why did David need 2 phones? Why was someone threatening him? That night she didn't confront him. Instead, she sat in the dark living room long after midnight, staring at the glow of the streetlight through their curtains. She wondered whether this was how people fell apart, not all at once, but piece by piece, until the truth was too tangled to pull free. But Emily didn't want to fall apart. She wanted to fix things. She always wanted to fix things. And that desire, the same kindness that made her bake cookies for sick neighbors, will become the seed of the plan that fooled the entire FBI. But before we get there, another strange thing happened, something small enough that most people would forget but important enough that Emily remembered every detail. An old woman moved into the house across the street. Her name was Mrs. Alden. She wore heavy sweaters even in warm weather, walked with a cane decorated with tiny painted flowers, and smiled like she knew secrets no one else did. Emily brought her a plate of brownies on the first day, because that's what she did for everyone. Mrs. Alden studied her carefully. "You have soft eyes," the old woman said quietly. "Soft eyes make people underestimate you." Emily laughed politely. "I'm not sure anyone underestimates me. I'm pretty normal." Mrs. Alden tapped her cane. "Oh no, dear. Kind people are never normal. They are dangerous in ways even they don't understand." Emily didn't know what to say, so she just smiled, said good night, and walked back home, never imagining that this woman, this fragile stranger, would one day play a major part in the incident that stunned the entire country, because Mrs. Alden was not who she appeared to be. And soon Emily wouldn't be, either. As the weeks passed, David grew distant. He stayed late at work. He avoided questions. He locked his phone. He jumped whenever someone knocked on the door. Emily tried to keep the peace, tried to remain patient, tried to cling to hope. But something heavy settled over the house, like a storm preparing to swallow everything. Then came the night that changed everything. It started quietly, too quietly. Emily was preparing dinner, simple pasta, garlic bread, nothing fancy, when she realized the house sounded wrong. There was no TV noise, no footsteps, no humming from the bathroom. David always hummed. She checked each room. Empty, 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 until she reached the attic. She never went up there. David always said it was messy, full of old boxes, not worth cleaning. But now she heard muffled sounds behind the door, a thump, a rustle, something that didn't belong. Her fingers trembled as she pulled the string, and the attic ladder unfolded slowly, groaning under its weight. She climbed. The air smelled like dust and something metallic. A dim bulb glowed above, flickering. And there, sitting on the floor surrounded by stacks of old documents and a laptop she'd never seen before. Oh, it was her husband. And he wasn't alone. Beside him was a briefcase, locked, scratched, stamped with a government seal Emily didn't recognize. Her heart thumped loudly in her ears. "David," she whispered. He spun around, eyes wide, face pale, not with guilt, with fear. "Emily," he hissed, "you shouldn't be here. You need to go, now." She took one step forward. "What is all this? What's happening? You're scaring me." He looked toward the window like he was expecting someone to appear outside. "Please, just listen to me. I can fix this, but you need to leave the house right now. Go to Mrs. Alden's and don't come back until I—" But before he could finish, headlights swept across the yard. More than one, maybe 5, maybe more. Emily's breath caught in her chest. "David, who is that?" He swallowed hard. "The people I never wanted you to meet." The next moment happened so fast Emily barely had time to understand it. Just the sound of car doors slamming, heavy boots, and a voice shouting through a megaphone. "David Carter, this is the FBI. Step out of the house with your hands where we can see them." Emily's entire world tilted. The FBI? Here? For David? She stared at her husband in disbelief, but his eyes told her everything. Every lie, every secret, every fear she had ignored was real. And then, for the very first time, she saw who he truly was. But what she did next, that was the moment that would make her infamous. That was the moment that fooled the entire country. And it all began with one extreme decision, a decision she made right there in the attic, her heart pounding, her hands shaking, the FBI surrounding her home. And that moment is where everything spiraled, because without saying a single word, Emily reached for the briefcase. And the entire world, David, the FBI, the neighbors watching from their windows, was about to learn what a kind woman was capable of. Emily's fingers brushed the cold metal of the briefcase, and in that split second, before anyone moved, before the FBI shouted another warning, every breath in the attic fell frozen in place. Dust motes hovered in the air like tiny stars suspended in time. David stared at her as if she were reaching not for a briefcase, but for the very thing that could destroy them both. "Emily, don't," he whispered, barely audible, more plea than command. But she didn't stop. Her hand closed around the handle, and the moment she lifted it even an inch, something shifted in David's face. Not anger, not betrayal, fear. Real, bone-deep fear. "Emily," he hissed louder, "put it down. You don't know what you owe." Before he could finish, the attic window buzzed with a deafening crack as a flashbang hit the floorboards. Light exploded like a miniature sun. The blast wasn't violent, but the shockwave rattled the entire room. Emily stumbled backward, the briefcase still in her grip, as David threw himself over her to shield her from a burst. Down below, the front door crashed open. Heavy boots thundered through the hallway. Shouts echoed up the stairs. "Second floor clear. Move to the attic. Suspect may be armed." Emily's heart pounded so loud she could barely hear over the ringing in her ears. She knew she should drop the case. Hide. Freeze. Do anything except what she was doing. But something inside her, something she didn't recognize, kept her clutching the briefcase like it was the only thing keeping her alive. David grabbed her shoulders. "Look at me. Emily, look at me." She forced herself to meet his eyes. What she saw wasn't the man she married. It was someone carrying a secret so dangerous he'd been living as two people. And now she was part of it. "Listen to me," he said urgently. "You need to trust me. No matter what you hear, no matter what they say about me, you run. Do you understand? You run and don't look back." Emily shook her head vehemently, tears burning the corners of her eyes. "I'm not leaving you. I don't even understand what." But she didn't get to finish. The attic ladder shook violently as agents began to climb up. David cursed under his breath. Then he did something Emily never expected. He lifted his hands in surrender. But not toward the FBI, toward her. "Emily," he said quietly, urgently, heartbreakingly, "you have to be brave." Before she could ask what he meant, he yanked a wooden storage trunk toward them and flipped it upright, forming a barrier between her and the opening where the agents would appear. It wasn't enough to stop anyone, but it might hide her for a few seconds. Seconds were all she had left. "Hide behind it," he whispered. "Don't move. Don't speak." Emily shook her head again, trembling. "I don't want to hide. I want to help you." David gave a bitter, sad smile. "You already are." There wasn't time to argue. The agents reached the attic. Flashlights blinded the room. One wrong move, one wrong twitch, and they'd fire. David took a deep breath, then stepped into view, hands raised. Emily crouched instinctively behind the trunk, hugging the briefcase to her chest, her heart thudding like a drum against the metal. "Hands where we can see them," an agent barked. "They're up." David shouted back, "Step toward us. Do not reach for anything." David obeyed, moving slowly, his eyes flicking once, just once, toward the trunk hiding Emily. That tiny glance said everything. "Trust me. Stay hidden. Please, Emily." She pressed her lips together, trying not to sob. Then she heard a click. Handcuffs. "David Carter, you are under arrest for..." Emily didn't hear the rest, because at the exact moment the agent began reading his rights, one detail hit her like a blow. They weren't looking for her. They didn't know she was here. The attic was dim, dusty, cluttered, easy to miss a terrified woman hiding behind an old trunk. But that wouldn't last long. Not when they searched the house. Not when they checked every corner. Not when they realized the briefcase was gone. Emily had maybe 1 minute, 2, if she was lucky, before they swept the attic fully. She swallowed hard. Her skin tingled with adrenaline. Every instinct she'd ever had, be kind, be gentle, be honest, suddenly quieted beneath a single, sharper instinct she didn't know she possessed. Survive. She took a slow breath, her fingers tightening around the briefcase. If she stayed here, she would be found. If she ran downstairs, there were too many agents. If she called out now, David's sacrifice would be for nothing. And if the briefcase really was as dangerous as he seemed to think, then she was holding something people might kill for. The thought hit her with cold clarity. This wasn't about David anymore. This was about something much bigger. She peeked over the trunk. The agents had David halfway down the attic ladder. None of them were looking in her direction. They had no idea she was even in the house. Their radios crackled constantly. Check the basement. Clear the dining room. Secured main hallway. Emily scanned the room desperately. The only other exit in the attic was a tiny ventilation hatch on the far wall, barely big enough for a child, definitely not big enough for her, unless she made herself small. Very small. Her father used to say she had bird bones, light, narrow shoulders, small frame. She hated hearing that as a kid, but right now, it might save her life. She crawled silently toward the vent. Every creak in the floor felt like it echoed through the whole city. Her breath came in shallow, careful puffs. The attic's low ceiling forced her to crouch awkwardly, but she didn't stop. When she reached the hatch, she pulled gently. It moved. Dust rained down in a soft cloud. Emily coughed silently, then inhaled through her sleeve. She pushed harder. The hatch opened just wide enough to reveal a narrow drop between the walls. Not safe, not smart, but safer than being caught. Without giving herself time to hesitate, she slid the briefcase through the opening first. It fell onto the insulation with a dull thud. Then she lowered herself through, wincing as it scraped her elbows. She squeezed her shoulders together, twisting her hips, trying not to panic. For a moment she got stuck, panic rising in her chest like water filling a sinking boat. She pushed harder, breath shaking, and fell through, landing on her side. The space was tight and pitch dark except for a sliver of moonlight leaking through a crack in the siding. She grabbed the briefcase and began crawling along the narrow corridor between the walls, boards pressing into her knees and palms. Above her, she heard muffled voices in the attic. Check behind those boxes. Is this everything? Where's the briefcase? Her blood ran cold. She crawled faster. The narrow space eventually widened into a section above the garage, where a loose panel led to the rafters. Emily pushed it aside and climbed down, dust covering her clothes, her hair tangled, her hands shaking violently. She reached the garage floor quietly. No agents here yet. A small miracle. She grabbed David's old jacket hanging on a hook, slipped it on to hide the dust, and tucked the briefcase underneath it. She forced the garage door open just enough to slip out, and stepped into the cold night. Lights flashed. Sirens wailed. Agents crowded the front of the house. No one noticed a woman slipping out the side, hugging the shadows, walking with quick but controlled steps. Emily crossed a neighbor's yard, then another, keeping to darkness, avoiding windows. She didn't run, not yet. Running drew attention. Running shouted guilt. Walking quietly with purpose, that looked normal. Every step felt unreal, like she was floating through someone else's nightmare. The briefcase felt heavier with each block she put between herself and the flashing lights. Eventually, she reached the edge of a small wooded area behind her street, the place where kids rode bikes and teenagers snuck off to smoke. She ducked behind a cluster of trees at last. Only then did she allow herself to breathe. Her hands shook uncontrollably. Tears fell silently, hot against her cold cheeks. Her mind spun with questions she couldn't answer. What was in the briefcase? Why was David hiding it? Why was the FBI after him? Why did he tell her to run? And most terrifying of all, why was she suddenly the only person holding a secret powerful enough to terrify federal agents? Emily curled her knees to her chest and pressed her forehead against them, trying not to fall apart. But she couldn't sit long. A branch snapped nearby. She gasped, tightening her grip on the briefcase. A figure stepped through the trees. Not an agent, not a neighbor, an old woman, Mrs. Alden. She wore her wool sweater, her flower-painted cane tapping lightly against the ground. Under the moonlight, she looked eerily calm, too calm, like someone who had expected this moment. Emily's breath hitched. And Mrs. Alden? What are you? How did you? The old woman held up a hand for silence. My dear, she said softly, you must come with me. Now. Emily blinked, confused. You don't even know what's happening. Mrs. Alden smiled, kindly, but with a strange sadness. Oh, Sweetheart, she whispered, I know exactly what's happening. She stepped closer, her eyes locking onto the briefcase hidden beneath David's jacket. And that, she said, pointing gently with her cane, is why they can't find you tonight. Emily froze. Her pulse spiked. Her breath shook. Her fingers tightened protectively around the case. How do you know about this? She whispered. Mrs. Alden didn't answer. Instead, she turned and began walking deeper into the woods, motioning with her cane for Emily to follow. Every instinct Emily had screamed against it. But another instinct, the one she'd been forced to listen to tonight, told her she had no choice. She stood, wiped her face with her sleeve, and followed the old woman into the shadows. They walked for several minutes until the woods opened into a clearing behind an abandoned cabin, one Emily had never noticed before. Mrs. Alden stopped at the door. Inside, a single lantern glowed softly. Emily hesitated. Why are you helping me? Mrs. Alden turned slowly, her eyes reflecting the lantern light. Because, she said quietly, you are not the only one your husband kept secrets from. Emily's stomach dropped. What do you mean? Mrs. Alden leaned closer, lowering her voice. Before the FBI showed up tonight, I received a message from someone I haven't heard from in 20 years. Emily swallowed. Who? The old woman smiled faintly. Someone who knew your husband long before you did. Emily's breath caught. A chill ran through her. Mrs. Alden, who are you? The old woman's expression softened. My name isn't Alden. She paused. And I'm not your neighbor. Emily staggered back a step, heart racing. The old woman motioned toward the briefcase. That thing you're holding, my dear, she exhaled slowly, has ruined better people than your husband. Emily's knees nearly buckled. What's in it? She whispered. Mrs. Alden opened the cabin door. I'll tell you everything, she said softly. But if you want the truth, you must be brave enough to hear it. Emily clutched the briefcase to her chest. She took one step toward the cabin, and in that exact moment, a gunshot cracked through the night. The bullet hit the tree next to her, splintering the bark inches from her face. Emily screamed, stumbling backward. Mrs. Alden's eyes widened. Inside! Now! Emily ran toward the cabin, heart pounding, but another bullet whizzed past her shoulder. Voices shouted from the woods. Flashlights flickered. Boots pounded against the ground. They weren't FBI. They were someone else. Someone faster. Someone darker. Someone who had been waiting for her to run. Emily reached the cabin door, and the moment she crossed the threshold, a shotgun blast lit up the trees behind her. Someone was hunting her, and they weren't going to stop until they had the briefcase. The house felt too quiet. Not the normal kind of quiet that made you appreciate a peaceful evening. This was a heavy, suffocating quiet, like a blanket pressed over your face. Like something was waiting. I stood in the doorway of our bedroom, the scene from earlier replaying in my mind like a broken reel. The way my wife had stood over my father, the way the knife clattered, my mother's scream. I kept hearing that metallic echo. My wife, Sarah, sat on the edge of the bed now, shoulders slumped, fingers trembling against her knees. The late evening light pushed through the blinds, striping her skin in thin bars of golden shadow. She looked as if someone had unplugged her soul. Do you want water? I asked softly. She shook her head. I want to explain, but I don't know how. Her voice cracked like thin ice. And even then, part of me, some deeply wired instinct, felt the wrongness. Not guilt, not fear, something else. Something I couldn't name yet. I stepped inside, closing the door behind me. It clicked shut, sounding louder than it should have. You can start anywhere, I said. Just tell me what really happened. She lifted her eyes to me. The look she gave was not confusion, not panic, almost calculation, as if she were measuring what to say, how much to reveal. Your father wasn't supposed to be home, she said quietly. The words hit me like a cold slap. What does that mean? It means, she whispered, that your father saw something he wasn't meant to see. A chill crawled up my spine, cold and sharp. Sarah, I said, stepping closer. You're scaring me. Tell me what you mean by that. I didn't mean to hurt him. She grabbed my hands suddenly, gripping them so tight I felt my pulse throbbing in my palms. I was protecting you. All of us. I knelt in front of her, trying to catch her gaze. Protecting us from what? She swallowed hard, throat tightening. Her lips trembled, yet still I sensed she was withholding something, carefully selecting every word. From him. The room seemed to tilt a little. My father. I asked, "You're saying he wasn't who you think he was?" Her grip tightened. He was following me, watching me, for days. My breath hitched. Following? Watching? My father? It made no sense. He barely left the house after the accident that wrecked his knee. He could hardly climb the stairs without groaning like the floorboards. What are you talking about? I asked, trying not to let my voice break. My father can barely move without help. I know what I saw, she whispered. Every night for the past week, someone was standing outside our window. The same height, same build, same way of standing. I recoiled slightly. Why didn't you tell me? I did, she snapped. I tried, but you said I was stressed, tired, making things up. I swallowed guilt. Yes, I had brushed her fear off once. The night she woke me whispering that someone was standing on the lawn. But I looked, and found no one. Even if someone was there, I said carefully, why would you think it was my father? Because last night, she said, voice lowering to a trembling whisper, I saw his face. A silence followed that felt like a hell breath in the lungs of the house. But there was something wrong with her timeline. Something that didn't add up. Sarah, I said slowly, my father hasn't left the living room after 8 p.m. since his surgery. I help him to bed. I sit with him. You know that. I know what I saw, she repeated, shaking now. He was out there, staring at me through the window like he wanted to hurt me. Her body trembled violently. Tears spilled, but I wasn't sure they were purely emotional. They felt performative. Something was off. Something behind her eyes didn't match the panic in her voice. Then why would he chase you into the kitchen? I asked, why would he confront you? Her lips parted, but no answer came. For the first time since this nightmare began, I wondered, was she lying? Or worse, did she believe something that wasn't real? Before I could speak again, someone knocked on the door. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. My stomach dropped. Sarah stiffened like a statue. We already knew who it had to be. My mother. I stood and opened the door. She looked 10 years older than she had this morning, eyes swollen, face blotched and pale. She stared over my shoulder at Sarah with an expression I couldn't read. Fear, anger, grief, all braided together. Can I speak to you? She asked softly. I stepped out into the hallway. She closed the door behind us, leaving Sarah alone inside. She's lying, my mother said immediately, voice trembling. Whatever she told you, she's lying. Mom, you think I don't know my own husband? You think he'd hurt her? She shook her head. She stabbed him. I saw it. And she didn't look afraid. She looked cold. A strange pressure wrapped around my ribs. I think she may be confused, I whispered. She says he was stalking her. My mother stared at me like she didn't recognize her own son. Your father couldn't even stand without help. How could he stalk anyone? I know, I said quietly. I know it doesn't make sense. But she's saying he was watching her at night. My mother's face shifted, not with confusion, but with something that looked eerily like recognition. What? I asked. What is it? She hesitated, and that hesitation was worse than any answer she might have given. I didn't want to mention it, she said, but 2 nights ago I woke up and he wasn't in bed. I froze. What? I checked the bathroom, the kitchen. He wasn't there. I found him standing at the bottom of the staircase, completely still, staring upward, like he was sleepwalking. But he wouldn't answer me. A faint chill prickled up my spine. He didn't say a word, she continued, just turned around and went back to the living room. Sleepwalking, I murmured. That must be it. My mother's eyes flicked to the closed bedroom door. or someone is lying in this house. A creaking sound echoed from inside the room. Both of us turned slowly. The bedroom door handle moved. Sarah stepped out, face pale as moonlight. "You're both talking about me," she said quietly. "Aren't you?" My mother stiffened. Sarah's gaze moved from her to me. It lingered on me with an expression I couldn't decipher. Fear, maybe, but not of my mother. Not of judgment. Fear of something else entirely. "I didn't lie," she whispered. "I didn't. I would never hurt him on purpose. I thought he had a knife." "You thought he had a knife," my mother repeated, voice sharp. "He did," Sarah insisted. "Oh, I thought I saw one. I swear he had something in his hand." "He had a TV remote," my mother snapped. "He was watching the evening news." Sarah flinched as if struck. "That's not what I saw. That's not—" She pressed both hands to her forehead. "Something is wrong with me. I know something is wrong with me." This admission chilled me more than anything she'd said so far. "What do you mean?" I asked, stepping closer. She shook her head rapidly. "I've been hearing things. Behind the walls. At night. Footsteps in the attic. Breathing in the hallway. Whispering, like someone is calling my name." My blood went cold. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. "Because I thought it was stress. Or maybe I was being paranoid." She swallowed. "But I saw your father outside. And tonight, he came at me with something in his hand. I swear he did." My mother's breath hitched. "Your father was unarmed," she whispered. "I know what I saw, too." The silence that fell was heavier than before. Thick, suffocating. Sarah began shaking, tears rolling again, but now her expression changed. Her eyes glazed, unfocused. Her lips parted slightly, as if she were listening to something the rest of us couldn't hear. "Sarah." I stepped toward her again. She lifted a trembling finger. "H.E.'s back." My heart stopped. "What?" "He's in the hallway," she whispered. "Right behind you." A jolt shot through me so violently that I spun around, breath locked in my throat. But the hallway was empty. Nothing but shadows stretching across the wooden floor. My mother made a choking sound. "Stop it," she said to Sarah, voice shaking. "Stop this." "I'm not lying," Sarah said, tears streaking down her cheeks. "He just walked past you. He's going upstairs." My mother's hand flew to her mouth. I felt the hair on the back of my neck stand up. "There's no one here," I said firmly. "Sarah, look, there's no one." "He's on the stairs," she whispered. "You don't see him, but I do." My mother stepped backward toward the wall, trembling. "You need help," she whispered. "Professional help." Sarah's expression twisted. "I don't need help. I'm telling you the truth. Why won't anyone believe me?" "Because," my mother whispered, "your truth keeps changing." The tension snapped like a pulled wire. "I'm done," Sarah said, voice suddenly flat, emotionless. "I'm not staying in this house another night." She turned and walked into the bedroom, grabbing her bag from the chair. "Sarah, wait!" I stepped in front of her. "We need to figure out what's happening. We can't split up now." "I'm not safe here," she whispered. "And you won't be safe either if you stay." "Safe from what?" She stared at me for a long moment, too long, before speaking. "From the thing wearing your father's face." A shiver knifed through my spine. My mother made a horrified sound. "What are you saying?" I demanded. "That wasn't your father in the kitchen," she whispered. "It looked like him, sounded like him, but the eyes, they weren't human." My mother staggered backward. "Enough!" she cried. "You're sick. You stabbed him, and now you're inventing monsters to justify it." Sarah's expression softened suddenly, as if pitying her. "I'm not inventing anything," she said. "Your husband died 3 days ago." My mother froze. "What did you say?" "You didn't know," Sarah whispered. "But I did. I've been seeing his shadow move on its own, hearing his footsteps when no one else was awake." She stepped closer to my mother. "The thing in the kitchen wasn't your husband. It was inside him." My mother's trembling turned violent. "Stop. Stop this now." I felt my own pulse pounding in my skull. Sarah, I said slowly, my father is alive. She shook her head with a sad, hollow smile. No, he isn't. And then something shattered inside my chest, because I remembered something. A detail I hadn't wanted to think about earlier. When we found him bleeding on the kitchen floor, gasping and clutching his chest. His eyes were open, but there had been something strange. Something that bothered me all night. His pupils dilated far beyond normal. His gaze unfocused, unresponsive, as if he wasn't seeing us. As if he wasn't there. My breath trembled. Sarah watched my expression shift and whispered, "You saw it too, didn't you?" I swallowed hard. I don't know what I saw. Yes, you do. She stepped close, her voice soft and trembling. You just don't want it to be true. My mother's voice cracked. Please stop, she begged. Please. I can't. Before she could finish, a sound echoed through the house. Thump. A loud, deliberate thump, coming from upstairs. All three of us froze. Another thump, closer this time, heavier. My mother's face drained of all color. Sarah slowly lifted her eyes toward the ceiling. He's awake. Sarah, I whispered harshly, don't. But she raised a shaking finger. No, listen. Footsteps, slow, heavy, dragging, moving across the floor directly above us. The three of us stood rooted to the spot, breath shallow, hearts in our throats. My mouth went dry. It's just the house, I whispered. Old wood. But I didn't believe my own words. The footsteps moved toward the top of the staircase. Stopped. Silence swallowed the hallway. Then, creak. The first stair moaned underweight. Sarah grabbed my arm, nails digging into my skin. He's coming. My mother choked back a sob. Another step. Then another. Slow. Deliberate. We stared at the dark mouth of the hallway, breath locked in our lungs. One more step creaked, and then the faintest whisper floated down the stairs. A whisper that made my entire body numb. Sarah. My mother screamed. Sarah crumpled to her knees, hands over her ears. I took one desperate step forward. But what I saw at the top of the stairs froze me solid. A hand. My father's hand. Butt blackened. Stiff. Veins dark as ink. And slowly, agonizingly slowly, another hand gripped the banister. Then his face leaned into view, half hidden in shadow. I knew instantly, instinctively, whatever was standing there was not my father. Not anymore. And as its dead gaze settled on me, it smiled. Sarah didn't breathe. Not because she forgot how, but because her body refused to obey her. Her lungs locked themselves the way a child locks a bedroom door during a thunderstorm. Tight, terrified, waiting for the noise to pass. But nothing was passing. The figure on the stairs, the thing wearing her father's face, was still there, still climbing, and every step was slow enough that she could hear the fabric of his clothes shifting. She could hear the soft tap of his fingernails scraping the railing. And worst of all, she could hear him trying to breathe like a human, as if practicing. Sarah, it whispered again. Not Dad's voice. Not even close. The imitation slipped, like a child failing to match a melody. It sounded too slow, too smooth, too deliberate. Her legs finally unlocked. She stumbled backward, grabbing the bedroom doorframe, nearly tripping as she yanked herself inside. She slammed the door and threw her whole weight against it. For a moment she waited for the banging, the heavy fist, the shaking wood, but none came. The whole way stayed silent. That silence felt even worse. She backed away from the door until her calves hit the edge of her bed. Her hands shook uncontrollably, her mind scrambling to make any sense of what she had just seen. It looked like her father. Same flannel shirt, same hair, same strong shoulders. But the movements were wrong. The timing was wrong. The breathing was wrong. And the eyes. She squeezed her own eyes shut, trying to push the memory away. Because those eyes were dead. Empty. Like someone had painted the color on but forgotten to give them life. It was like staring at a puppet that believed it had fooled her. She needed to call the police. She needed to run. She needed. Her thoughts stopped abruptly when the soft, slow footsteps began again. Not on the stairs. Right outside her bedroom door. Tap, tap, tap. Her heart hammered hard enough she could hear blood rushing in her ears. She backed away until she hit the opposite wall, her hands lifting without thinking, palms out like she could hold back whatever was coming with the force of fear alone. Then the footsteps stopped. Silence. Sarah. This time the voice was almost right. Almost. The pitch was closer. The rhythm steadier. But the tone, the warmth, still wasn't there. It was like the thing was learning, improving. She covered her mouth and shook her head violently. Go away. Go away. Go away. The doorknob twitched. Then it twisted. She sucked in a tiny gasp. But the door didn't open. The knob rotated one way, then the other, then back again, like the creature didn't understand how it worked. The metal rattled softly, as though being tested. A sudden jolt hit the door. Not a knock. Not a bang. A bump, gentle and confused. Then another bump. And another. It was like the creature was pressing its head lightly against the wood. Like it was smelling her through it. Sarah couldn't take it anymore. She shot across the room, grabbed the lamp from her nightstand, and unplugged it with a trembling yank. Her legs moved before her brain processed a decision. A survival instinct shoved logic aside and took control. She threw open the window. Cold air burst into the room. Her backyard looked dark and endless. Branches swayed. A distant streetlight flickered. She had two choices. Face whatever stood behind the door. Or jump. She didn't think. She just gripped the window frame and swung one leg outside. Then another sound froze her in place. Footsteps again, but this time farther away. Moving down the hallway, then down the stairs, then toward the kitchen. She blinked in confusion. Why was it leaving? Was it giving up? Was it distracted? No, it wasn't distracted. It was looking for another way in. Her breath caught. The back door. The one that didn't always latch properly. The one she told her dad to fix months ago. Suddenly she wasn't so sure she should jump, because the moment she did, she might land right in front of it. And that thing would be waiting. She pulled herself back inside, slid the window shut without locking it, afraid the clicking noise would give her away, and grabbed her phone off the nightstand. Her fingers moved blindly, fast, desperate. She dialed 911. A voice answered instantly. 911, what's your emergency? Her throat tightened. She whispered, someone's in my house. The operator spoke calmly. Are you in a safe place right now? No, Sarah whispered, unable to keep her voice from cracking. His downstairs. His not my dad. There was a pause. Not long, but long enough that Sarah felt like she was hanging in the air. Okay. The operator finally said, her tone softening. Stay calm. Officers are already on their way. Stay where you are. Lock your door if you can.